Sunday family day. I'm here with my favorite Aunt Lori. I spent all weekend in a hole writing songs and listening to Kanye and losing my mind, so it's good. Sunday you gotta get out, you gotta get in the sunlight and get some family in. So me and my favorite aunt had some breakfast. Perfect. It's been almost 2 years since my daughters have chosen to stop seeing or speaking with me. This is not a success story or a how-to. As much as I've searched, I've yet to find the magic combination of words and actions that will make this nightmare come to an end. Honestly, though, what's helped me the most is to know that I'm not alone. If this helps any of you make it through just one more day, I think it's a worthwhile video to make. So here goes.
It is. Think of the Stockholm Syndrome, but on the home front. Parental alienation is where one parent targets the other parent and through very subtle or very overt measures changes the child's love for that parent.
So this is my story of how I became an erased mother.
There are people I know who they can have a collaborative divorce. They can have a divorce in which everybody has some dignity and they can resolve these issues without lawyers and judges and court-ordered therapists and everything intruding in their lives. So much of what I went through the last 8 years, it was unnecessary. It was completely unnecessary.
Alec is one example. If you telephone your child, you get no return call, or the answering machine is always on. So it's a way of diminishing contact.
Since I've last seen the children, August 13th of 2013, I dropped them off in a parking lot at the Target shopping center just a few miles from here, Alafaya Trail.
Face what's happening and fight. I didn't do that. And neither did you, I suppose. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this. This is completely out of your control. So the first 48 have passed. Your child now has a new reality. And that new reality has you playing the role of a villain. There's nothing simple about this one because life is complex. You are a villain in some ways. I certainly was. Your kid likely has found some comfort, even briefly now, in this new reality. And that temporary respite from pain is preferable from facing the horror of who they now think you are. I don't know when I lost you. But I know that I know there was a point in time where I could have kept you. Your kid likely has found some comfort, even briefly by now, in this new reality. And now you're perceived as pain. You're perceived as betrayal. You're perceived as malevolence. Now begins the in-between. So here we stand, broken, hopeless, torn asunder. Our children have rejected us. How can we live now? We have to realize that we're still playing a parental role in their lives, even as they reject us. So one of the first things that happened with my daughters is that they blocked me on their cell phones. And over the last 2 years, they've each gone through maybe a couple of different phone numbers, new iCloud addresses, but the very first thing they do, it seems, literally is block me. When I find out what their new phone number is or what their new iCloud is, I've had to resort to using text apps. The way that I found best to get my message across to them, because the way I saw it, I got one shot and it's emotional. And if I send a text message, even a long text message, there's a chance that maybe, they're just going to delete it or something like that. But over the last couple of years, I've made 8 or 9 different unlisted YouTube videos. And I've texted those to the girls because, I don't know, I guess I figure what'll happen is if they click on it and start watching, maybe they'll watch the whole thing. I've been pretty vulnerable with them in these videos. I've been in tears in a lot of them. I've begged in a lot of them. I've done and said just about anything I could think of to say. And like I said, I haven't found that magic combination of words or actions yet, but it's not for lack of trying.
I think it's was fun.
Yeah.
Dinosaur?
How are you today, Mr. Dinosaur?
Away dinosaur.
Hello, Mr. Dinosaur.
This is dinosaur. Oh, hello, way dinosaur.
I was gonna go talk to...
Are you alright?
Are you all right?
Are you okay?
Are you okay?
Are you okay, you dinosaur?
Is that dinosaur okay? What's he doing today?
It's one dinosaur.
Raw!
That's it, though.
I'll do it.
One.
Raw! I don't know if we want to play that game. Oh, son, that's the Squish Father game. That's called Squash Dad. I honestly don't know exactly how this affects my 4 little ones. Because they come over here and it's dad, 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 dad. And then they go home and they have to hear their mom and their 2 older sisters referring to me as Rick as if I'm not related. Used to be I'd get really insecure at times and I would be paranoid and terrified that I was going to lose them too. To be honest, part of me, I can still make myself that paranoid and think that way. But what I've chosen to do is just to become impeccable and to become irreplaceable in their lives. The first of my court-appointed reunification counselors used an analogy when discussing the urgency behind getting me in front of my daughters. The longer you stand on the end of a high dive, the harder it becomes to jump. I had no intention of making a film like this, a film about parental alienation. A couple things happened last week. Number one, I wrote a song for my daughter who I am alienated from because it was her birthday, and it's called Letta's Song. And when I put that online, I heard from other alienated parents, which really affected me, just to know that this wasn't a unique situation and that I wasn't alone in what was going on. But then surprisingly, I heard from a lot of formerly alienated kids. So I'll read one. This is from a Redditor that I'm not going to show her name because she's since deleted the comment. But it says, "And now I'm crying at work. Ugh, I'm so sorry. I didn't talk to my father for a few years from around 16 to 20 years old. I came back, though, and worked on what was strained. It isn't perfect, but it's better than not having my father in my life. Hang in there, Dad."
I was alienated from my father at 4 years old. I didn't know that that's what was happening, but it very much so was. Having children myself now, I know that there is nothing that my father could have done that would have ever justified my mother's influencing me into hating my father. From the, "Your father betrayed us, honey," to the, "You are just like your father," whenever I did something that triggered her anger and rage. I didn't know that I was literally being brainwashed into hating my father, and nothing that he could have done wrong in his marriage to her should have ever been able to stop his daughters from the free and guilt-free love of their father. But I knew the consequences of not pleasing my mother. I didn't see it as malicious, but deep down, where only my inner voice exists, I knew that I felt I had an obligation to please my mother, so that trumped everything. I turned on my father. Then I was going to have to testify to a judge as to why I didn't want to see him. At 13 years old, I faced my father in a conference room with my mom, my stepdad, 4 lawyers, a mediator, and my father, and I looked him in the eyes and I told him I didn't want to see him ever again. Now at this point, still, I couldn't tell you why I hated my father, other than what he did to my mother. That is the only thing I could have ever told you. And I didn't have the foresight, or I didn't have the wherewithal at that age to understand that it takes 2 to have a failed marriage, and that their marital issues had nothing to do with who he was to me as a father. So deep down, I was dying inside, and I didn't recognize it as death at the time. I was losing my life every time I had to hurt him, and I knew I was hurting him. But somehow my mother's voice was always there, comforting me and confusing me with reassurance that I had every right to feel the way that I felt. But I always knew that I was devastating him. Every single time that little girl was there calling out, trying to get someone to stop this whole charade and let her have her daddy. But my mother's voice always comforted me into feeling content. And do you see what I did there? I used the word comforted because she knew how to make it feel that way, that she was comforting me. But what she was really doing was manipulating me by pretending to truly be concerned for my supposed grievances. But I know now that she knew deep in her gut that my father loved me unconditionally, that my father lived for me, that my father was absolutely in love with me. She knew he was a good father. She would later actually admit this after I became a mother myself, because she knows that I know that he was an amazing father. I never could give a reason as to why I hated him so badly, other than things that my mother had put in my head about herself. But if you were to ask me and I would have listed, they would have all been my mother's grievances, not mine. Because the one thing that saved my life was knowing that he was always out there searching and fighting for his little girl that he heard calling out for him. He never stopped trying. He never gave up, even when I pushed him and rejected him constantly.
The 2 worst parts of this, obviously not seeing my girls in almost 2 years. And I know that I worked. My ex was the stay-at-home mom, so I wasn't there during the day, but we had a close, loving relationship like I do with all my kids. And that changed overnight. But the second thing is watching what this whole thing did to the 4 little ones, because they felt split and their loyalties were unclear, I think, and, they struggled because you got to imagine they come and see their dad for 8 days a month, but then the rest of the time they live with 3 women who say that they hate me more than anything else in the world and how terrible I am and how I did this wrong and that wrong. And so I've watched the kids struggle with that, and I've had a lot of insecurities too. At first I didn't think it was possible to lose any kids. I didn't think that was a thing. I never heard of this. And so when that happened, it was just a real reality-shattering situation. So now I'm looking at my 4 other ones like, oh my God, please don't go anywhere. And, luckily, 2 years in now, we're in a good place. Me and the 4 little ones. There's still a split. There's still a divide. They won't tell me anything. They have these little prepared speeches when I ask about their sisters. How's Tori? How's Letta? And it's always, Ask mom if you want to know anything. We don't know anything. Ask mom. These very coached, obviously coached, rehearsed responses. And it breaks my heart. And it's frustrating at the same time. Hey, there he is. Good job. Good job, Gabe. Good job. Great job,
Okay,
son.
Gabe.
Okay, buddy.
Oh my God!
Good job, Gabe.
Are you a brother or girl?
So I have tried everything. I've bought them clothes. I've bought them shoes. I bought candy and cards, and I show up at their school, and I'll try to call them out of their school, and they block me all the time. Always they block me, and so I always have to use like a texting app to try to send messages to them, but it's a cat and mouse game because they block the texting app. It's maddening. The whole thing is maddening, but I'm never gonna stop. That's the thing. My life is theirs. And so if the rest of my life means that I spend the rest of my life chasing them, then that's what they get from me. Because I can't stop. I love them. I'll never stop until I have them back. I can't live without them. They're the air that I breathe.
You need to be there. Okay, you need to show your child and be there every single time. I have a little bit of advice before I end for people who have no contact with their kids. And this is also just very, very sad. But there are people who come to me and say, I haven't seen my kid in 10 years or 6 months or whatever it is. It's too long, right, to go any period of time where you haven't seen your kid. And the first thing is never give up hope. That is certainly the message of my book. The people I interviewed said, I treated that parent badly, but I never wanted that parent to go away. I didn't really understand what it meant to say to my parent, drop dead or don't come back. I didn't know that they would never come back, right? So that's why you don't take it personally and you keep coming back. And they said, I always missed that parent, and I'm so grateful that that parent kept at it and kept fighting for me and kept calling me. They don't want you to give up on them, no matter what they say. From your perspective, that message of love is a crumb, because you have so much love as a parent to give to that child. But from the child, that crumb is a loaf. It's everything. Because it's the difference between knowing that parent loves you and wants you back and not knowing that. And you have to see it from the child's perspective.
Heck of a hiker. What about you?
12 miles.
That's a long time.
Don't be jumping like that. You're jumping like a wild. Okay. Keep your hands down. Just do it nice and tight. Boom, 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 boom. You got it. Okay, go. Jab, jab, stop. What you're doing is you're kind of cocking back a little bit, especially on your jab. Don't do that. Look at me. Throw it right from where you're at, okay? So bam, jab, just like that. Because if you start doing this, people are going to know you're going to throw a punch, okay? So just keep your hands like this. Boom. Go ahead, jab out. Go. Boom, boom. Hook. Cross. Keep those elbows down. Jab, jab. Look. It's a hard combo. We'll get it. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah. Go chin down. Chin down. I'm Dad. I'll be your host. This is Victoria. She's holding her little brother.
Hi.
And we got an emergency. There's Nicoletta cooking dinner.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Nicoletta. I help Dad cook on his birthday. I love cooking.
And what is
a
it?
lot.
Let me see you pop another balloon. Remember, slow down, squeeze. Got one. Yeah.
Really close. This time is close.
Go. Whenever you're ready. One more time. We're sponsored by Strawberry Fanta. Yes, Strawberry Fanta. So here's the epilogue, and it's very common that I've heard from a lot of other alienated parents that this type of thing happens. So I had filed to go back to court in January. I'm fighting to get one-on-one time with each of my kids, 1 day a month, and I'm fighting to be able to pick them up from school on the school days that I have them. And I'm also asking for another crack at reunification counseling. Nicoletta's 17 now, and I only have 1 more year to be able to try to utilize that resource. I didn't have any luck with it the first time, but then again, we weren't actually estranged the first time. So maybe now that it's been a couple of years and we're actually estranged, maybe I'll have more luck with it. So, but of course, my ex doesn't like that, and she says that she's gonna move now. So maybe we'll have a Snake Bites Ape Chronicles moving episode soon. I'm not sure. I'll keep you posted.